We've all been told cartoons are for kids, be it a parent, grandparent, or some older figure in our life. We see more and more live-action adaptations of animated classics, trying to come off as more realistic, graphic, and relatable. People sometimes forget just what animation can do. The illusion of movement, animation tells stories and conveys themes and messages. Anime more so analyzes characters. It analyzes the world. It shows graphic things like gore, blood, and body horror to carry its messages. It explores the mind of multiple characters and their mentalities, often showing them descend into madness or some form of despair. Anime is very risque in that regard. Western animation is more generic and tame, usually always ending in some form of happy ending. Very little gore, very little trauma to characters. When they lose, it's not that bad, and they can easily bounce back from it at times. Western animation, it keeps children in mind, and it keeps comedy in mind as well. Anime respects the viewer's intelligence. It knows its audience and it understands the medium they are in. Anime isn't afraid to scare viewers or show viewers something unsettling. What helps anime in general is that a lot of the shows were initially comic books or novels. A lot like how the Marvel Cinematic Universe and DC Cinematic Universe are now. Their movies are heavily based on pre-established comic books and comic book stories. For example, one anime, Puella Magi, Madoka Magica, at first glance it may appear to be a kid's show, little girls making wishes and fighting monsters, but by the third episode, one of the main characters gets their head graphically bitten off, plain for viewers to see. Later, another character is doing what can only be considered as self-harm as she neglects her needs to continue the work that she was tricked into. All of the heroes in this story were tricked into deals that only end in their deaths and despair. Then, ReZero. A man is spirited away to a magical fantasy world, but every time he dies, he is brought back to life to another time. The main character, and at times, the characters around him are brutally and graphically killed, sometimes tortured in very gruesome ways. The main character comes back, trying to find the best outcome to be with the girl he loves, his sanity ever diminishing. Goblin Slayer, an anime about a man who hunts goblins. It showed a very graphic scene in its first episode, which set the tone for the entire series going forward. It explores how one's choices and options affect the world around them, and how they are defined by those options and choices that they made. Anime has shows and films that explore the traumas and regrets of characters, shows with socio-political plot points and messages, movies that are coming-of-age stories, or stories about embracing childhood and childlike wonder. Anime teaches you lessons, exposes you to nuance and true gray areas. It succeeds because anime isn't afraid to hurt who or what characters they need to in order to progress the story. In anime, oftentimes no one is safe, and everything the characters do serve a greater purpose. How does Western animation compare? The majority of Western animation is very comedy-centric. Most animated shows in the West are labeled comedic, or the majority of the show is filled with jokes and comedic actions. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Entertainment is entertainment, and entertainment is made with certain people and groups in mind. But because of the line of thinking in the West that all cartoons are for kids, all animation is for children, it has led to many episodic, silly, and at times condescending or cringy shows and cartoons. Teen Titans Go is one example. The reboot is full of fart jokes and has lowbrow humor. The Powerpuff Girl reboot is full of memes and too many pop culture references to carry actual messages. There are shows that are very prominent in many people's memory. Shows like Kim Possible, Danny Phantom, and The American Dragon. While having a core theme, in their case being young heroes, they never really dove into the intricacies and nuances of their situation and choices. Kim never dealt with managing her hero world and her school life long term. After becoming a ghost, Danny starts rescuing people. He never showed fear or concern for his new state of being. These characters may grow, but rarely. Their development takes a single episode. Other shows from the early 2000s, Justice League, the mini Spider-Man series, and others were still very episodic and didn't have linear, coherent narratives. Storylines and development was mostly contained to single episodes, rarely two-parter specials, and by the next episode, they either forgot or they were off to the next thing. This even trickles down to Western adult animation and adult cartoons. Adult animation in the West rarely shows blood or gore, and when they do, it is mainly for comedic purposes, and it is very over the top. Tom and Jerry, pain equals humor type comedy. In adult animation, we usually see a wild family experiencing a couple days of havoc and mayhem. Peter berates Meg, Stewie and Griffin are on an adventure, Stan and Francine disagree, Steve or Haley have their own story. Outliers do exist, and there are even more outliers in this day and age. I grew up on American Dragon, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Code Lyoko. We now have shows like Miraculous Ladybug, Primal, Kipo and the Wonder Beast, The Owl House, and Infinity Train, to name a few. With anime becoming more mainstream, its following in the West has also increased. My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer have cult-like followings of young children and older teens. My Hero Academia is outselling Marvel and DC Comics at the moment, not to mention web series and web animation like Hell of a Boss, Ruby, and Hazbin Hotel are very popular with their own internet following. This isn't a knockdown of Western animation or Western animators, but there is a stark difference between how most anime is handled and how most cartoons are handled. Anime is not afraid to shock you, not afraid to scare you, not afraid to make you disgusted or sympathize with the plight and despair of its characters. Western animation plays it too safe. Repeatedly being called made for kids has taken away animation as a medium in the West. Cartoons are seen as for kids, and the only way that they can be seen as serious, as relatable, is for colors to be dulled, lines to be replaced for flesh, and for monotones and monologues to be played by actors. Animation can do so many things, be so many things, express so many things that can't be expressed by basic flesh and blood. Animation is a medium that must be respected, not taken for granted or insulted. You never know what can be seen through these beautiful displays of moving lines and colors. Thanks for watching.